Coming up on A Courageous Heart.
I really don't believe that God wanted the murder of my husband. I don't believe that he ordains violence or murder. Could he have stopped it? Yeah, I really think that he could have stopped it. Why he didn't, I don't know.
A Courageous Heart with Karen Dying.
It was Sunday morning, March the 8th, 2009. The folks at Maryville Baptist Church had gathered together for the 8 o'clock service. Pastor Fred was in the middle of his sermon. He was doing what he loved to do, ministering and preaching the Word of God to his congregants. During the service, the doors to the church opened. A young man by the name of Terry Sedlick walked through. He made his way toward the sanctuary and started down the aisle toward Pastor Fred. The two men exchanged words, and the folks in attendance thought this was another one of Pastor Fred's sermon illustrations. But before long, they realized this was no illustration. This was in fact reality. Terry Sedlick pulled out a .45 caliber pistol and fired it once at Pastor Fred, hitting his Bible and sending the pages like confetti throughout the congregation. Congregants were on the floor screaming, praying, wondering what in the world had just happened. Pastor Fred was lying at the front of the church. He had been killed with a single gunshot wound to the heart, leaving behind his wife Cindy and two beautiful daughters, Alicia and Cassidy. We're here at the First Baptist Church in Maryville a year and a half later to visit with Cindy Winters. She forgave the man who made that shot. And I say that if you can forgive the man who murdered your husband, you indeed must have a courageous heart. How are you and your daughters doing? How are you doing today?
I think, given the circumstances, we're doing really well. That doesn't mean that we don't have hard days, but I would say that a year and a half later, we are maybe experiencing a little bit more of living and a little less surviving.
I remember the day that it came across the news that the shooting had occurred. Something just pierced my heart immediately, where I felt, God, what are you doing here? Here is someone who came to this community, started this church, or was at this church at 23 years old, has been here all these years. You're now, started at 30 members, and now the church is at 1,200. Obviously, he is doing your work and doing a good job. What are you doing? Why are you allowing such a thing to happen? Why such a tragedy? And I think what even shook me even more to the core than that was, if this could happen to him, then this could happen to our family. This could happen to anyone. Did you have any difficulty wrapping your brain around this? At any point, did it shake your faith? I mean, did you have your why moments? Why God? Why us? Why now?
I think that all of us, probably in our relationship with Christ, we need to go through that process where we do ask those hard questions of, how can I trust you when there are, difficult circumstances in my life or just tragedies in the world? Because it is difficult to get our mind around, why does God allow those things to happen? I really don't believe that God wanted the murder of my husband. I don't believe that he ordains violence or murder. Could he have stopped it? Yeah, I really think that he could have stopped it. Why he didn't, I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that the fact that he didn't means that he has made plans for the rest of my life. It says in the Bible that he has good plans for us, plans to prosper us and give us, future and a hope. I think sometimes we want faith to be, or we want our faith and our relationship with Christ to be just keep bad things from happening to me. And really, when you think about it, that's not faith. And there have been times when I have been very angry with God, and I have screamed at him, and I said, when are you gonna show up? When are you gonna take care of this issue? Especially when I've seen my kids suffer. That's been really hard. And then there have been other times when I have, been in my bed at night and I have just felt, very upset. And then the next morning I'll get up and I'll open my Bible and God has just spoke right there to me, to that situation.
The murder of Pastor Winters not only sent the Winters family and his church congregation into shock, the entire Maryville community was struggling with what had happened and how to forgive.
It was pretty clear that on Monday morning, what the people in Maryville in this area really needed was friends, people to talk to, people to pray with, and what started to unfold was just prayers of people who were calling the station, and they were asking us to pray for them because they were in shock, and what they'd witnessed in church obviously was just shocking and horrible. But they were also asking for prayer for the rest of the congregation, for the community, for the person who was at the time a suspect, which for me, I was even wrestling at that time with how to even pray those prayers with people as they called in.
Was it that immediate for you that you were able to forgive this man for what he had done?
I do feel that forgiveness is a choice. I don't think it's a feeling. I think it's a decision that we make. I don't think that forgiveness is something that means that what happened was okay, or we're in any way minimizing the severity of what happened.
There was a woman who called in, and I mean, she was in tears, literally just sobbing with emotion. She was so upset at what had happened, understandably. And she was just saying over and over again, pray for those girls. Pray for the girls. And what she meant was pray for Fred and Cindy's daughters. She said, I think Cindy is going to be okay. I don't know how, but she seems so strong through all of this. But we just don't know what this is going to do to these girls losing their father.
But it was really about the second or third night. When a tragedy like this takes place that completely, happens and you're not expecting it, you're pretty much in shock for a period of time. And I really hadn't thought much about the man who did this. But I think it was the second night, I was tucking one of my daughters into bed, and she just said, really softly, she said, Mom, I hope the man who did this comes to love Jesus. And at that point, just something really softened in my heart, and I thought, yeah, I hope he does too. And we began praying for him, and there's only one way to conquer evil, and it's with love. It's with God's love. It doesn't mean that the reality of what he did and what he took away from my family doesn't hurt. Every day you wake up and you realize, how very real your loss is. But I ultimately pray that he will find peace with God. I firmly believe that when Jesus died on the cross, he died for all of our sins, including the sins that he committed on March the 8th. And I have no doubt that, that God would forgive him. And one day, that he could spend eternity in heaven with Jesus Christ.
Any time, any moment, things can change. They can change dramatically, instantaneously. And the perspective that I had on God shifted just a little bit, that my hope changed from, God, I hope you protect me from these things that can happen in life after this circumstance. It's my hope that when things like this happen in my life, I'm able to go through them with the grace and the dignity and the faith that that Cindy and some of the other people at First Baptist Church in Maryville went through. They've served as an inspiration and a challenge to my faith, and they've opened my eyes to a different understanding of how God is a loving God and that things will happen, but it's really him walking alongside of you and how you deal with the tragedies of life, way more significant than the potential of managing to avoid them.
I want to know, at the end of the day, when the kids are in bed and you've had your hot bubble bath and you've spent time with the Lord and you crawl into bed, how does she do it? How do you know that tomorrow's another day and I have peace to go to sleep tonight?
You know, I have done a number of different things at nighttime. I started just stopping every night and writing down some things I was thankful for about during the day, because I found that many times it was easy at nighttime in that loneliness to focus on what I didn't have and on instead of what I did have. But on the most difficult nights, though, I just simply cry out to God. I mean, I do. I just simply say everything that I'm feeling to God, usually verbally out loud, and that has really helped me. And I have found that many times just in that expression that there is a lot of peace that God ushers in. You know, one of the unique things is when everything's taken away from you, you become 100% dependent on God. I mean, I would have liked to have said that I lived a very surrendered life to God before. I mean, I tried, but I don't really think I had a clue what that meant. And so, you know, when you have to rely on God to get up in the morning, to go to bed at night, just to be able to function, it takes your walk with Him to a whole new level. There's a verse that David prayed in Psalms that says that, you know, you desire truth in the inner parts of my heart. And I think it's when we give Him those really vulnerable little spots in our heart that God, He does amazing things to reveal Himself to us in ways that we probably really haven't seen Him before. And I have found God to be very sweet to me during those times.
I have to tell you, in preparation for this interview, I had talked to several people who had lost spouses. One in particular, similar in your case, in that she had lost her spouse in a murder situation, and he was gunned down just very tragically, very suddenly. And she told me, she said, I go to church every Sunday, but I don't pray, and I don't trust God. And it broke my heart. And I have to tell you that I sat at my desk that night and really cried, because I had your story on one hand and I had hers on the other. And on one hand I saw hope and forgiveness, and on the other I saw bitterness and just so much pain. And for me, it was as if God was saying, this is what happens when we hold on to religion, but I want you to hold on to me. I want you to hold on to me. You have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Tell me what that means to you. Tell me what having a personal relationship with Jesus has meant to you before, during, and after this event, and how that makes it different than just going to church on Sunday and looking for healing.
A personal relationship is so intimate, and it's comforting, and it's strength, and there's a lot of reassurance in that. I have found no reassurance at all in religion. I have found that to be empty and hollow and condemning, and I don't really think that God likes religion. I think it's really what keeps us away from understanding who He really is and what He wants. But I think it can sometimes provide us with maybe, you know, superficial comfort, because it seems like the right thing to do, you know, and so it's hard sometimes not to get caught up in that. But, you know, when I was pretty young, I realized that I didn't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I realized that I had sins that kept me from having a relationship with God's Son, Jesus. And what though really was the kicker was when I came to an understanding that Jesus died so that He could have a relationship with me. And when I understood that, you know, that really brought things into proper perspective for me. You know, that somebody would die to have a relationship with me. I didn't really understand that kind of love. And I still don't get that kind of love. Especially when I realize that God sent Jesus, His Son, to die. And when I think about, you know, my kids suffering, and I see that kind of suffering, I mean, I just can't understand as a parent how that could even happen. But anyway, when I embraced that love, it really changed my life. And I have experienced, that closeness in that relationship.
I understand that since Fred's death, the congregation has continued to grow, and you have actually seen God sort of pull beauty from the ashes that occurred on that March 8th. And you've even started your own ministry. And so I was just wondering if you could share a little bit of how that was such a tragic, horrific day and time period, and how now you said you feel as though you're starting to live a little bit again. You're starting to feel the breath come back into you again, and get your bearings. How is it that God has taken this horrible, horrible event and turned it to good for His kingdom?
There's been a lot of different ways, and I do believe in beauty from ashes, and there's so many passages in Isaiah that speak about that, and they give me a lot of hope and a lot of promise. So I'm thankful for those reminders. The congregation continues to grow. It was a growing congregation, but we continue to see it on the right path, and that's been very, very exciting. And I think Fred would be so proud of the people here in the church, and how they've continued to remain faithful to God during this storm. And then last July, so right at a year ago, some friends and I started a ministry called Grace and Hope Ministries. And I would say that that's probably been two words that would really kind of sort of define what I have experienced from God, just His grace and His ever-ending hope. And never-ending hope, I should say. And so we started that ministry, and that really wasn't something I set out to do. It just sort of kind of came about, and it was just an effort to be able to, as I went out and as I encountered people in the community through some speaking engagements, I would just come across people again and again and again who experienced a lot of loss, and not necessarily just death, but just loss. I mean, it's the thing that really unites us as people. Nobody can go through life unscathed by loss. So we started this ministry, and it's just to help people experience God's grace through relationship with Jesus Christ and hope, regardless of whatever circumstance they may have faced. It's just a variety of different things that we try to do to help people see the grace and hope that can be experienced through Jesus Christ. And it's been very healing for me. I hope it's been healing for other people who have encountered that ministry. But it's just my wish and my prayer to be able to sort of give back, to be able to point people, I would just say, kind of maybe in the right direction. But not that I have so much to give, but I kind of feel like I'm on this road with so many other people, and I would just love for us to be united as we sort of walk this journey of grief together, this journey of loss together, just trying to see all that God has in store for us as we heal.
So many times I think we like to get together and talk about all the bad things, and I just am so grateful for a woman who says, yes, this stinks, I don't like it, but you know what, we're gonna make something out of this with the help of the Holy Spirit. How are your girls? Are they experiencing the same sense of forgiveness? Do they feel that they're in the same place Mom is? Are they mature enough to really wrap their brains around what has happened? And just tell me a little bit about where they're at, how they're doing, how you as their mom are grieving as a wife, but yet you still have to be a mom. You still have to be there every day. How's that been for you?
It's difficult at best. It's difficult on a good day. It's within the challenges. I would say that I still see God's faithfulness and I see His goodness, but it is very exhausting. I would say that I have seen, it's kind of like my kids take turns a little bit, with their grieving. One will go through something and the other one kind of, is on the back burner with issues, and then the other one will kind of go back, and then the other one will kind of deal with something. I can't imagine if I would have 12 children, what would be going on. But I see God at work in their lives. I do. I know that God is going to use this one day to redeem their lives. I firmly believe that. I remind God of that often. I feel like I'm Jacob sometimes wrestling with God, and I'm hanging on to him. I'm like, I'm not letting you go till you bless these kids. And I do. I somehow, some way, I know that God's going to use this in their lives to not only serve a purpose for a greater good, but ultimately to bless them. So I don't know how, I don't know in what way, but I know that to be true. As far as, do they feel the same way that I do? In many ways, they've kind of ebbed and flowed. I think that we're all kind of on the same page. I have never placed my expectations on them. I have never told them they have to feel a certain way. I think one of the best things to do is to give them permission. I've tried to give them permission to be mad at God, to give them permission to be mad or upset or whatever. I think if they have a feeling, they need to express it and to process through it and to go on. And God can handle anything that they throw, his way, as long as they continue to stay close to him, I think is the main thing.
I love that you say that, because one of the things I always feel, and I share with women a lot, is that God sends us little love letters every single day. Mm-hmm. It's whether or not we choose to look for them.
Right.
And in the busyness of life and in the busyness of raising our children, and just all the things the enemy likes to throw at us, so many times I feel like we trample on those love letters and we miss them. Mm-hmm. And I think that your life at this point certainly is a result and evidence of God's love for his children, and how you have walked this out so publicly and so gracefully and been such an example. And I'm sure that hasn't been easy for you. But that you do recognize that the Lord has provided for you, and in many ways was providing for you before the incident even happened, that he was protecting you in some ways and preparing you. And when you look back, you can see that. My final question for you, Cindy, or I guess it's more, I'm going to invite you to speak directly to our viewers who maybe have gone through a loss of a loved one through death. Maybe it's been a divorce. Maybe it's been a job, economics, and they feel he has forgotten them, that he doesn't care about them. This is all fine for Cindy Winters because she's a church girl and she was the pastor's wife, but he doesn't care that much about me. And you and I both know that that's not true, that he does. Mm-hmm. So I would just like for you to take a moment and just speak your heart to those who are hurting. And maybe we don't have them all here in a room, but just they're sitting in their living rooms and they're looking at you going, saying, what do I do, Cindy? Does he care about me? Can I come to the cross? Am I somebody worth saving? What would you say to them?
Well, I would first of all say that I am so sorry for whatever loss you have experienced. I know that loss can be very disillusioning, and it can often shake us to the core of who we are and can cause us to question everything that we believe in. But I do not believe that in any way that God has allowed your loss to hurt you. I believe that there is an enemy out there who wants to hurt you. And one of the things about loss, many times, I think that can hurt us even more than the initial loss, is the lies that can surround it. The lies that can keep us from the only one who can really offer us true healing and true peace, and that is Jesus Christ.
Certainly Cindy's testimony in her interview today has touched your heart, as I know it has touched mine. So many times I think that our lives are like a patchwork quilt, that there are parts of it that are made out of colors we maybe don't like so much, and then there are parts of it that we absolutely love. But God is what binds it all together, and at the end of the day, it's what wraps us up and lets us know that we're safe in his loving arms. Whatever it is that brings you to the foot of the cross, we want to encourage you to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Cindy has to get up every single day knowing that she's not getting 4 plates out of the cupboard, she's getting out 3. That there won't be 4 reservations for vacation, there will only be 3. But every day she chooses, she makes a decision to honor God with her life and to go on and to do so with hope and joy, because she knows that because of the promise of Jesus Christ, one day her family will be reunited in heaven. Pastor Fred was a man who lived his life each day on the promise of an eternity in heaven with Jesus, a message he preached to everyone who would listen. Here is Pastor Fred in his own words.
We are his workmanship. In the Greek, the word poem is the word for workmanship, where we get our word poem. Poem. You are God's poem. God has a purpose for your life. He cares about what you do with your life. He has a plan for your life. He has a destination for your life. And it is so important, it is imperative that every one of us recognize that our life is of significance and of value, not because of what family we come from, or how well we can play basketball, or how good looking we are, or what clothes we wear, or how much money we have, or whatever else we can obtain. Our life is of value and significance because we are a poem that God wrote. And we are part of the purpose and plan that God has. Your life is significant for one reason and one reason only. Because you were created by God. And that gives your life significance. We are his workmanship. God wonderfully and fearfully made each and every one of us. Every life matters because every life is a gift from God. You know, God designed you and created you and made you to serve him. And if you're not serving Christ, your life will always be incomplete. I want to challenge you. Live for him. Serve him. Trust him. And that's where there will be completion in your life. That's when there will be joy in your life. As you're living out your life in faith to please him. Not yourself, but to please him in all that you do and say.
If you'd like to be a partner of A Courageous Heart or make a one-time donation, please contact us through A Courageous Heart at www.courageousheart.org. The preceding program was made possible in part by the following ministry partners: Mike Kehoe Ford and Meyer Electric Incorporated. If you would like a DVD copy of today's program, you may order one through our website, www.courageousheart.org. A Courageous Heart is a viewer-supported ministry.